Let me welcome all of you to stop by my office, building a CFO / controller consulting practice. We're here to answer any questions you may have if you're just getting started. We have two people who have very well established practices, Jeff Matthews and Sean Hale. And I don't know, Peter, do you consider yourself established now?
I'll go with established. I won't go well established, and I'm not in the major leagues with Jeff and Sean, that's for sure. But
okay, but Heidi, don't pay any attention to him. I'm just kidding. He's a great guy. So we'll get started here and answer any questions you may have. The usual topics we can cover for you involve the form to establish your consulting practice, LLC, or just, those various things in insurance. We usually cover that, but we're here to serve. So who's new to the meeting? Heidi, are you? Okay. And let's see. Oh, good. We're going to have a nice group. A few late arrivals. How people can show up late for a Zoom meeting, I don't know. Heavy traffic on the internet, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so again, let me welcome you to stop by my office. We're going to talk about the issues regarding establishing a consulting practice, and anybody who has questions, just raise your hand. So we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm Matt Budd. I've been chairing the Financial Executives Networking Group for about 25 years. It's a little hobby of mine. I actually earn my living from my consulting practice. It's a search / consulting practice. I currently have 4 people out on assignment. Just to give you the broad economics, I carry E&O insurance. You have to be insured because people could sue you for any reason or no reason at all. And I engage, obviously, the services of other people. Oh, Marty Lappin is going to join us. Terrific. You have to have ways to pay people. Those are some broad topics. Jeff, why don't you kick in here while Marty's connecting? Jeff Matthews, why don't you give us a quick thumbnail sketch?
Jeff Matthews, as you can see, I've got a firm called Evolution Business Advisors. I spent about 7 years with B2B CFO, and then hung out my own shingle, and I've been doing it on my own ever since. I'm in the Cincinnati area, currently carrying about 4 clients, although I've got a meeting tomorrow morning to hopefully pick up a 5th. So, that's kind of where I am.
Good. George, Stephen.
Sure. Nice to meet everybody. Former CFO, former investment banker. I do some consulting work now in the CFO field, but obviously, always looking to learn from others. So it'd be great just to hear from Jeff and everybody what they do, and just learn a little bit more.
Okay, Joe Powell.
Hi, everybody. My name's Joe. I'm a former CFO, public company CFO, and private equity CFO. Have been on hiatus, I guess is what I would say, for the last 1.5 years, dealing with some health issues, but I'm healthy again and contemplating getting back engaged, and just curious about whether consulting might be an avenue to pursue at this stage of my career.
Good. Sean Hale.
Hi, folks. I'm Sean Hale, based in Austin, Texas. I've been doing nonprofit nuts and bolts my whole career, so more than 20 years now. And 2 years ago, I decided it was time for me to do more client-facing work. I wanted to get more engaged that way. So I've been doing a lot of fractional CFO and related types of work. And because of the pandemic, I ended quickly pivoting from delivering work to selling work because I couldn't balance family and doing biz dev and delivering all at the same time with young kids. Had a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old come home for 18 months. And so that drove me really quickly to building a whole practice. And so we're up to, we're a team of 7, I want to say right now, and looking at adding a couple more people in Q1, if all goes well. Serving nonprofits, small and mid-sized mostly, starting to stick my toe into some of the larger nonprofits as well.
I think it's a good point, Sean, that if you establish yourself with a consulting practice, the only way you can make any real money is having other people work for you and doing some of the selling. If you try to do all the work yourself, it's harder to make. You're stuck with your hourly rate times the number of hours you can work.
It's definitely tougher that way because, for me, it's also kind of grinding the gears to be delivering a little bit and doing biz dev and worried about this, that, and the other. And so, for me, I've found that I've enjoyed doing the biz dev part of it, and that I have a great network of colleagues who are really, really, really good at what they do. And so why not, if I think, Robbie's going to be better for a job anyway, why not connect Robbie to a client and have me, even if I can sell the gig, Robbie's going to do a better job for them. And so everybody wins.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who they want to do the work, but they don't like to sell. So if you've mastered that, you're a benefit to them. Peter Talion.
Good afternoon. I'm in Connecticut. I left the corporate world about 6 months ago and started fractional CFO work, both on a volunteer basis and on a for-profit basis. I've got 2 clients. They're keeping me plenty busy. Typically, both clients together 15 to 20 hours a week, which is about as much as I want to work on a for-profit side. I've learned a lot from this group. I do have a question after we do the roundtables on billing and billing rates. So if you can come back to me on that, Matt, that would be great.
Yes, definitely. Heidi?
I'm Heidi Arneson, and I am based in the Houston, Texas area. So, and I'm a CPA. So I established a CPA practice, and then I do some consulting on the side. So not necessarily CFO work, but I think a lot of principles apply for the work that I do, the advisory work that I do for my small business clients, in helping them with a lot of their tax issues, of course, and budgeting and just different things that helps their business be sustainable.
Excellent. Harry Tavedian?
Hi, I'm Harry Tavedian. I'm a CPA, started with KPMG, spent about 30 years in private industry as a controller in consumer products companies, professional services companies, and most recently advertising technology companies, one of which was public, so I was a public company controller. I retired in late 2020, did some part-time work for a religious organization, and I just signed up through Solomon Page to be a controller for an ad agency, backfilling the controller who will be working on a system implementation. That should take me through late spring. And I was just curious about eventually potentially starting my own consulting practice.
Well, Harry, you're smart to work for someone else first.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of learn the mentality of being a consultant as opposed to an employee. It's an important lesson to learn. Tony Lasasso?
Happy New Year, everybody. Tony Lasasso, Mile High Business Consulting. Previous life was spent in corporate finance before branching out. And really the focus of our company is leveraging technological solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. So we have a number of service partners with that and do referral partnerships with fractional CFOs. And along with that, have been doing some small business forecasting, budgeting, reporting, process improvements to kind of augment our offerings and the value we bring to our clients. So similar to Sean, kind of have done the dance of finding the balance of doing self-perform work, outsourcing, biz dev. So it's definitely kind of cyclical flow that you kind of get into, and it evolves probably each of the last 4 quarters for me as I've been kind of learning as I go. But definitely an interesting balance to try to achieve between outreach and in-house work, and then leveraging your network of partners. So I agree with Sean. It's definitely kind of a bit of magic, if you will.
Steve Isaacson? You have to unmute.
Sorry about that. My name is Steve Isaacson, CFO in numerous industries. Last couple of years, I've done a few interim CFO assignments and deciding whether I want to continue that on a full-time basis or not. So I thought I'd jump into this group and see what you guys are talking about.
Good. Marty Lappin. You have to unmute, Marty.
Just gotta find the button. Good
Yeah.
afternoon, everybody. I'm Marty Lavin. I've been doing consulting probably for the last 6 years for myself. I combine fractional CFO work with mentoring of company executives and career coaching. My background, like many of you, have been a CFO of numerous companies. Actually, I've been in 21 different industries. And so that enables me to do consulting for many different types of companies. Plus my background is not only finance, but it's also operations and IT. So I take an approach of really trying to do strategic type work with my clients to help them reach the next level. It's more strategy than transactional. That's what I've been doing.
Good, thank you. So, just to recap real quick, there's all different kinds of consulting practices you can set up. The B2B CFO model, which Jeff Matthews mentioned, is the goal is to have 5 clients that you're working for 1 or 2 days a week. So you lose a client, you don't lose your whole income. There's also part-time CFO work, right? So you're working for 1 client part-time. You have a devoted block of time. And then, of course, there's full-time interim. I think I covered all the possible combinations and permutations there. And you can do all of them at different times. Anyone want to add something here? Anybody? All right, so
one of the things,
questions, Jeff?
Matt, I think the thing to keep in mind, as you mentioned, if you go with the interim type route and working effectively full time, you're going to have some roller coaster as you gain and lose clients. So it's a matter of balancing. I mean, Sean's model is totally different than my model. So let's say one's right or one's wrong. He's got more earning capacity, I think, than I do. But you just have to decide what's going to be the right formula for you.
Yeah, and you can start out with any model, and doesn't cost anything to change. You might start out working full time on a consulting basis for somebody that you know. As in all things job search related, the best source of clients are people who know you, know of you, or know people you know. That's really where you get started. If you're thinking you're just going to hang a shingle out and people are going to start calling you, think again. That doesn't work. You really have to work the phones and connect with people. Sean, did you want to?
Yeah, I want to.
You were going to say something. So
I want to combine a couple of your ideas before on the models, because I think you're right on the general models. But I want to bring back in an idea you put out there about 8 minutes ago, that getting started under somebody else's shingle can be very good, and or bringing in a friend. If you have the opportunity to do a full-time gig, but you're like that, the way that you don't end up like having that cycle that Jeff mentioned of like, I'm having to work full-time on this, and then so I don't have time to do the biz dev, and then this one gig ends and I have 3 months of nothing. is by never being full-time on anything. And so having a network of friends and trusted colleagues, perhaps somebody on this call who you can bring in, so that rather than you putting in 60 or 70-hour weeks on one client, it's no, you're putting in max 30, and your colleagues, your friends are doing some of that. Or, I have different colleagues I've outsourced to. I've even have somebody in Brazil who I've sent some of the more basic entry-level work to. She's doing a great job. I'm having a conversation next week with somebody in Tanzania about picking up some similar work, because my woman in Brazil, like her dance card is pretty darn full, as my grandmother used to say.
Bringing in partners or working on assignments jointly. I would just throw out as a topic, creating legal obligations with other people. The FECG, my only remaining partner is Bruce Lynn. One of our co-chairs of the national organization is Marty. The problem is Bruce and I had 4 other partners in the beginning. We went to dinner after a chapter meeting and formed an LLC. And shortly thereafter, one of the people decided he wasn't making any money, so he wanted out. And it was kind of the end of the year, and it ended up being a big legal mess. And then 2 of our partners decided they knew more about everything than I did, and they wanted the corporate ID number, so we had to form a new LLC, and just runs into legal expenses. So I don't know how Sean, I'm not prying. If you don't want to tell us, you don't have to, but the best arrangements, the 4 people who work for me right now, they are consultants to the FECG, and I pay them on a 1099. They are not part owners of my consulting practice. I want to keep things as simple as possible.
I agree. I would, it just, people's needs change, their wants change. And if you have to, go different ways, everybody's going to have a different idea of what their share of it's worth. And so whether it's a single project or even for a single project, like, be clear where the buck stops, and either you own it or your buddy owns it. And, it's on, one of your insurance, not both. I wouldn't set up an LLC. I might have different feelings, if I'd known and worked with somebody for a long, long time about having some kind of equal partnership. It sounds like that maybe you hadn't worked for a long time with those folks, and so that changes the equation. But to get started, why do all that? Just, it's either your gig or it's theirs, and one of you's helping the other.
You have to keep
simple.
the
1099.
You have to be very clear whose business it is. And, otherwise, there's it's just wasted time. People decide they want to do consulting, and then they find out it's really not as much fun as they thought it would be. And now you have a legal relationship with them that you have to unwind. Mm-hmm. Even I was in business with Doug Fine, who's just a terrific man. He was my business partner for 15 years, and still, unwinding that took more than a little bit of lawyer time, because there was equity in the business, and you get into discussions of what's the company worth. It can get messy and ugly, which distracts you from what you're trying to do, which is earn a living.
Yeah, and it can hurt a perfectly good friendship, and so
it can. Yeah, once money gets involved, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a marriage. Be careful who you get into bed with, especially if you're saying I do's and like this is forever. Well, be really careful.
I've just been very fortunate. Bruce Lynn and I are still very good friends, and we've been in business for 20 years. It doesn't happen often. Marty, you just are joining us. Maybe you want to introduce yourself to us.
Hi, Matt. Sorry to be late. I was on another Zoom call. So I'm Marty Chafkin. Right now I'm a fractional CFO at a boutique law firm that's trying to expand into non-legal services. I'm here to learn. My lesson has been a very quick lesson that, as a consultant, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I would like to expand my client base. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. I don't remember who it was, but somebody wanted to talk about billing rates.
It was me, but I think Heidi wanted to make a
Heidi had
point
a
first, so
question.
Oh, sure. I'm
I'll
sorry.
Yeah,
I
I
yield
just,
to
I
Heidi.
just had a comment on partnerships because I've
Okay.
been through that as well. And there's
Oh.
a saying that the only ship that does not sail is a partnership. So I'm gonna live
I'm
by
writing
that
that
one.
down.
And I agree,
That's a good one.
1099s are the way to go.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to talk about billing rates? Who wants to start the conversation?
I'll start the conversation with a question to the team. So I've been in business 6 months and I took the advice of the team early on in terms of setting the billing rate. I do CFO strategic consulting work. So I set the billing rate and it was a high billing rate and the client accepted it and there was no further discussion. So thank you very much to the team that suggested that approach. And my question is, in addition to now doing strategic level work for this privately held company, day-to-day accounting operations need some attention, not for the long term, but at least in the short term to get the close process in a predictable fashion, to do it repeatedly and so on and so forth. So I have some extra time. I'm spending the extra time working with the staff on the close process to get that all ironed out. And I'm running a lot of hours. And what I have decided to do, and I appreciate the feedback from the group here, is that I am discounting the hours that I'm spending on more routine accounting manager tasks. Because my view is that if I continue to bill all those hours at my CFO rate, the overall engagement is going to become less attractive to the client. They'll pay it because they need it at the moment. So I'm going back to a piece of advice I was given by somebody outside this group, a fellow consultant, who says that to some degree, you always have to keep an eye on billing for the work that you do and being flexible in terms of that. So I haven't changed my billing rate. What I'm doing is I'm discounting some of the hours that I'm spending on the accounting close. And I identify those as discounted hours.
Oh, I think that's a good approach. I can give you real quick my model and you can take it for what it's worth. Basically there's 250 work days in a year. So if you take whatever annual salary you're trying to achieve and divide it by 250 and add the 15 to 20% because there's no benefits, you've got kind of an hourly number, right, that you can work against. Now, that's what I'm paying my consultants. And so I pay out 65% to my consultants of what I bill the client. So I negotiate, I get an understanding of what the person out on assignment would like to earn on an annualized basis. I back into what I have to pay that person, and then I just divide by 0.65. And that's what I charge my client. Now, the lesson here is that if you're competing against people like Robert Half, they're not paying out 65%. They're paying out 45%. So you have a pretty good umbrella over your hourly rate that will help you. And that's your sales commission if you sell the work. Okay? So that's my model. Anyone else want to jump in here?
But I guess I'm going to press on that point. I understand your model, and that's very helpful, Matt. I'd be interested in other people's feedback in terms of essentially, you're doing fundamentally two different tasks. You're doing CFO work in some of the hours, and I'm doing accounting manager work in the other hours. I'd be interested in feedback from the group in terms of the approach I'm using at the moment, which is discounting those accounting manager hours.
The question I would have for you, Peter, is how does your client differentiate between what you do hours for CFO work and what you do for, I'll call it regular accounting work?
So the answer to that question, the CFO work is primarily working with the president and owner of the companies. The accounting work is working with the accounting clerical staff on a close process. So at this point, I can be fairly distinct in terms of the type of the work I'm doing and the people I'm working with.
Oh, good.
Right, so that's
Well,
how you.
I think Peter's point is he doesn't want to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. And that's very smart.
Understandable. As long as you could, keep it separate, that's fine. I could see, however, at times where it gets melded, and then the question is, what do you do?
Yes.
Because I know you want to keep it separate, which is good. You know, an alternative that you can, you could bring in some other staff, you know, to work for you to do the other piece of accounting work.
Yeah, the complexity is that based on my recommendation, this team has already brought in additional staff to do this work, and it's still not working out. So at this point, I don't want to kill the golden goose. You know, the logical owner and president of the companies might say to themselves, I don't need a CFO, I need a controller. I don't need to pay Talion what I'm paying Talion his hourly rate. I can go out and find somebody for 60% of what I'm paying Talion, and that will get the work done. Now, what the client loses in that case, I would argue, is the strategic analysis and the true CFO work. So to some degree, Matt said it best. I'm trying not to kill the golden goose and trying to find.
Right, understandable.
And you don't want, but you don't want to be doing too much of the controller work. You know, as long as you're comfortable with the mix.
Yeah, I view it.
Nobody's business here, you know.
Yeah, I view it as a short-term approach till I get the things rolling smoothly. At that point, I can step out of it. That's not the type of work I want to do. I want to step out of it, and I want to step out of it and still maintain the rate that I originally set.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
all good.
Appreciate the feedback.
Anyone have something to contribute on billing rates?
Well, I was going to say, Peter, you know, somebody told me something once. If your client's not complaining about your bill, then you're not charging enough. So you can take that into there. But I find too that it is a trade-off, right? You don't want to set that precedent, right? Because your time is worth money, right? And your skill set is worth money, so they're getting that value. I find if you tell clients, if you scope it, what I bill you at my normal rate, you know, and you can provide an end of the rainbow, right? Hey, this is it, we're done. This is all it costs to get this fixed and we're done. The more fine they are paying the price. It's when it's ongoing meter running, like every month, it's high, it's high, it's high. That's when they get annoyed, right? Because there's never an end in their mind that the price is going to come back down. In my experience, they're fine with the one time. They're not fine with the ongoing. And they see the value of you. Hey, you're getting Peter, right? He knows what he's doing. He's like the more expensive attorney, right? It's going to take him an hour, what would take an inexperienced period 3 or 4 hours, right? And you're going to get a better solution. So I could fight both ways. I've done it as well, where I've discounted for some more commodity service. But on the other side, you know, I find myself, and I think as finance people, maybe we're all like that. We're not as aggressive on the pricing. So, you know, to ask for more and let them complain might be a way to go too, or somewhere in the middle. I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's just what you're comfortable with.
All right.
I just would put in 2 things here. Number one, the price you set with your client, you're generally stuck with for that client. I was in the advertising business for 9 years, and changing fees you were charging a client is next to impossible. But to your point, George, as my father would say, it's whatever the traffic will bear plus 10%. They never get you on the 10%. So until somebody actually says no, you're not charging enough. So you have to test the market and see what the value is, and you always have to be selling the value. But I would just cautionary tale is to trying to change rates with a client you have a relationship with is not easy.
Okay. I will say one of the things I did was I tried to develop I tried to develop a handful of bookkeepers who could come along and do that accounting work. Sometimes it's worked out well for me. Other times, I've got one guy who I basically had to walk away from the relationship because they kept wanting the bookkeeper to do everything that really, you know, normally would have been my realm. And so I've got 2 clients I lost over the last few years because of that. Now, in reality, the bookkeeper keeps calling me up and asking me questions, and it's like, you know, if you want me involved in it, I'll be involved in it, but I'm going to do it on my billing rate. And you know, if the client's willing to pay that, that's fine. But particularly in one case, the client was very cheap and was always trying to figure out a way to keep the bill down. So
the problem with, in my opinion, with what's it called? I'm sorry. if you're doing a project and you give a final bid on doing a block of work, the problem you typically run into is project creep. You've given a price for
Right.
X number, what you think are X number of hours to finish a defined project, but then they start finding more things for you to do, and they want you to do them for the same. Oh, is that extra? So I have to tell you, I have found in the time I've been doing this, it's much better to be on an hourly rate. You're getting paid and they're getting charged, and everybody is generally happier. If the client is paying you a fixed fee for some block of work and they feel you got it done too quickly, to George's point, then they feel like they've been taken advantage of. And it's hard to deal with. Whereas if they're paying an hourly rate, everybody's happy. I work 10 hours, I get paid for 10 hours. That's just my attitude. I've never seen bidding work to, a full job to work, because for what we do, once they find out there's somebody who actually knows how to do things, they find more things for you to do. And is it included or it isn't included? Heidi, did you want to chime in here? You have
Well,
a
I
CPA
think-
practice, you're doing tax
Yeah.
work. I think tax work sometimes is defined, you have to do a return, how much are you getting paid for it?
Right. And so tax work is like that. And then for my clients that are on an advisory proposal, it's a monthly fee, but I find that, and of course I do an engagement letter with the scope. And if it's not in the scope, this is the hourly rate and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of how I cover that piece.
Okay.
But I find that one of the key things is educating your client on the amount of work that you're doing, and communication, just communicating with the client. So that would be my advice, is you just keep that communication open and that education open, so you don't ever get to that place where there's a big surprise on either side.
Excellent point. Yeah, that's an excellent point, Heidi. Maybe people want to chime in on this. The issue of communicating with your client. I have all my consultants fill out a timesheet, and they need to fill out what they worked on that day. So as opposed to being an employee where you're just there as the CFO and you're doing all the CFO stuff, once you're a consultant, you really have to be able to document to your client what you worked on. That communication, I think, is key, because they don't think about it. You're just taking care of stuff, and you have to have a list to show them at some point if they ask. Anybody want to chime in on this?
So,
Peter?
Matt, I think, so I have this client now, and interesting, I was brought in by another consultant who's working on marketing strategy. And the assessment from the group was, the other consulting company was that it would take X number of hours for me to do what I needed to do. And that was fine, and bill hourly. Well, I have been billing hourly, and, there was mission creep. There just was.
Yep.
And I presented the, the principal with the bill, and he said, well, wait a second. I was told this would be what I was told, and this is more than that. And I said, well, here's the documentation, because I document my hours. And he said, fine, but this can't go on. I feel like I've been sandbagged. And I thought, well, gee, I guess I've been sandbagged. Essentially you had the job scoped by another consulting company that apparently didn't really understand what they were scoping. But now it seems impossible to change the range in his mind, and I'll live with it. But I think, it's a lesson learned for me.
It's very hard, I think, coming in on with a new client to come up with an adequate statement of work.
Right.
Am I wrong?
They all,
John,
the mission
you've got a lot of
creep has
clients
been,
you're managing.
yeah. The mission creep has just been kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah.
from what they thought they wanted to what's being asked. So,
Well, to a very large degree, clients don't know what is possible,
right,
right? Yeah. You know, they give you something that they thought was impossible and you get it done very quickly.
right.
And they say, oh, you know how to do that? Do you know how to do this? And before you know it, you've got a lot of work. Sean, did you want to jump in here?
I agree with everything y'all are saying, and so for that reason, I will. Most of our agreements are for just a box of hours a month, like 20 hours a month or something like that, and
okay.
we don't give a specific scope of work so much as, you know, more than likely we're going to be working on A, B, C, and D for you client, but you know, this is going to be worked out every month between our project lead and the client, what this particular priorities are. And you know, if they start to dig into, and I don't have many really want to get into like wanting to have a flat rate, but if they do, I just let them know, like, hey, in my experience, most small and mid-sized nonprofits have infinite administrative needs, and we're happy to help out with all of that. The last thing we want to do is get in a shouting match with you, you know, 4 times a month about whether or not something is in scope or not. Like, no, we'll help you out with it. If you want us to push a broom in the parking lot for our rate, hell, we'll come over and push a broom in the parking lot. Well, and we'll also tell you it's not a good use of your money, but we'll push a broom. And that helps them get to the other side of it in most cases, that it's a bucket of hours, because there is always something that comes up, always. Yeah, the only thing that we don't do that on is when we're doing an administrative diagnostic, and I just because that one, it is kind of fixed, but I still have to work on my pricing on that because I've underbid it every time so far. I just sold another one. Maybe we got the mix right. And Matt, you want to comment, but you are muted.
I very much like your bucket of hours concept, Sean. That's very good. I hope everybody wrote that down. That's a good concept.
Well, I think too, a important thing in that is just managing expectations, right? I think the first 3 weeks, 2 weeks of the engagement is critical, right? You got to be talking a lot. You got to know what their budgets are. We know when I do a proposal, I give a pretty wide range, just to test to see where they're actually at numbers wise in their brain. And I know there's a minimum set of hours I have to devote to add value, right? I just know I'm going to need this much time. And so in their responses to those questions and managing their expectations, keeping an eye on the scope initially, you know, saying, hey, we're already over our hours, I think is critical in the beginning to getting them okay with, versus surprising them. Well, we did all this work. Here's the invoice, right? All of a sudden, they know you did a lot of work. Some reason they don't attach that work to the invoice. I don't know why. They expect a small invoice, even though you work 24/7. So I think, you know, just getting in front of that sooner versus later. And just from your own, if your client's going to not pay you for those hours, right? I think you want to know that sooner versus later. So for your own survival, I think that's the other thing, right? Just to make sure that you have that conversation soon.
You know, we're all in the, as financial officers, we're all in the business of no surprises. So it's, you know, it has to be part of your DNA that you're not going to, you have to manage those client expectations, George. I agree with you.
Yeah.
You don't want them to be shocked at the end of the month when you submit your bill.
Well, I think too, it comes from our nature as, you know, I think a lot of us probably come from an operations background, right? Where we were asked to do things and we did them and it didn't matter. You just got them done. Didn't matter your effort. I think in this role, when you're starting to be billable, that changes a bit, right? It's you got to control your hours. You have to understand, manage the expectations, and really come to an agreement beforehand with the client. So it's a different mindset.
Yeah, it is. The advertising business is built on 2 things. One, like law firms, billable hours, right? We have a fee structure. We come up with a bucket of hours to pick up on Sean's description of it. We have a monthly fee. We're planning to deliver X number of hours in our minds, whether we've shared it with them or not. And then the other model in the advertising business used to be commissionable billings. So the measure of how much work you had to put in was based on the cost of the media, and you got a percentage of it, and then you could budget your staff accordingly. Now you're in the consulting world. I think Sean and George have come up with some good concepts for you to apply. Who else wants? Marty, you want to
Well,
step in
I
here?
think, in looking at it, I think we're covering many of the bases that we have to. What Heidi said relating to engagement, letter, and communications, okay, that is extremely important, I found, especially when you work with, I'll call it, small, medium-sized businesses that are not sophisticated.
Yeah.
Because when you started talking about one thing, they have in their mind something else. I had a situation where I was hired by a PE firm for one of their portfolio companies.
Mhm.
And the PE firm told me that they wanted me to come in and prepare 18 months of financial forecasts for the organization. And so, I went in, I was talking to the president and going through this, and in part of the meetings, we had the PE firms. And it was like, okay, we're going to put together the forecast. Well, as I started getting into it, the more that I picked up from the conversation was they didn't want this forecast. This isn't really what they wanted. What they wanted was a model, a cash flow model that they could adjust for any period of time that they could then present to other future investors. Okay.
Mhm.
And I went through this whole thing, starting working on the modeling, and all of a sudden, well, we had this conversation. They looked at me like, what are you doing? And it's like, this is what the engagement is, right? This is what we talked about. And the president of the company where I was at, the portfolio company, said, oh, no, that's not what we need. What we're looking to do is to present this, and through, I'll call it translation, and
Mhm.
bringing all the parties together, okay, we really got to see that the engagement that the portfolio company had in mind was not really what they wanted. So you really have to have the communication, manage, as George has been saying, expectations, but at the same time, you have to be able to communicate with them and show them, this is what I will do for you in the language that they will understand.
Yeah. It's certainly important to give them what they want, what they need, rather than what they ask for. Who wants to jump in here with, do we have another, we have 15 more minutes. Who wants to suggest another topic?
I've got a quick
Harry?
question. It's actually two related questions. I understand the, if you're going into practice, the setting up an LLC to protect your personal assets. And then E&O insurance, why would you need E&O insurance if you don't have any personal assets in the LLC? And then how much E&O insurance should you have?
Anybody? I think I'm paying about $6,000 a year for E&O, and I have a lot of people out on assignment. It probably can be gotten fairly inexpensively.
Mhm.
And it's a matter of people can sue you for any reason or no reason at all. And you need to have insurance. It doesn't have to be prohibitively expensive, though.
Hey, Matt, do
Heidi,
you
I
have
don't
it
know what
through,
you want to, Marty?
do you have it through one of the state societies? Or you have it from an outside insurance company?
Outside insurance.
Okay. Because what you can do, a number of the state societies offer their members D&O insurance. It's more like a cooperative type situation, but you could get it at a reasonable price. So you could look at that as you go through it.
that for CFO services or CPA services?
I'm sorry?
Is that mostly for CPA services? Would that cover like consultations for CFO services, number one? Number two, most people limit the amount of damages to fees paid as part of the engagement letter.
Well, what happens is that the organization, they would be the CPA societies, but
Right.
in the CPA societies, part of the D&O relates to, I'll call it the consulting services that we offer.
Okay.
And that's how you could get it, as I say, a very reasonable price.
Yeah. You know, you can, if you're touching people's accounting systems, and that's the story now, it's harder to do any real damage today than it was years ago. Our ad agency in the 1980s was one of the first ad agencies to have an intranet that was just in our building, okay? Before that, we had some individual workstations, like 2 or 3 computers, and one of our admins typed in C: format and erased a hard drive. She thought she was on one of the floppies. You know, it happens. And, you know, if you do it for an entire company, the FENG database was originally networked in my home. I had staffers coming in, and I was on vacation, and one of the staffers erased an entire chapter. It happens. So that's why you have to carry insurance. These kinds of things
That's
do
what-
happen. You're touching other people's computer equipment. Let's assume in today's world, it's more, you inadvertently introduce a virus to their computer system, right? And they trace it back to you. Now what? So that's why you need insurance.
The thing I'll mention,
We have about 12 more minutes. What other topics? Jeff, something come to
well, one
mind?
thing I'll mention on the insurance topic, I had one client that had me doing an awful lot related to their equity situation. It was an employee-owned non-ESOP, and getting into their benefit plans and things like that. So I had them add me as an additional insured on their professional liability policy. And we made it clear that they were primary and I still carried my own policy that was secondary. But, you know, you can go bare, but you got to understand there could be a cost. And, you know, this also gets back to your whole legal structure. You can form an LLC, and you know, you have to have the reality that they'll probably sue you personally and sue the company. So even though your contracts are written with your legal entity and all that stuff, you got to be prepared to be sued personally.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up an important point, Jeff, that we didn't discuss, which is if you have an ongoing relationship with a client, have them add you as an additional insured to their E&O insurance. You have an ongoing relationship, and it should be possible to do. So what, in the 10 minutes we have left, what other topics do people want to discuss? Anybody, if you don't jump in.
So maybe I'd be curious, Matt, about any recommendations on how you get started. I'm a former PwC auditor, and you know, I did a lot of networking business development work back in the day, so I'm familiar with how to do it. But I've been struggling during the pandemic because I don't care to network through Zoom, to be truthful, and I want to do it in person, and so I've been waiting. But any recommendations?
Yeah, well, you can't wait, Joe. This is not going to end anytime soon. You know, you're gonna die of, to take a sailing analogy, you're gonna die of thirst before anything happens here, right? You only have so much water. So, you know, you've got to start dealing with what's here and now. And I would tell you, Zoom is a lot better than meeting in person. It's a lot more efficient. It may be uncomfortable, but at least if you're starting from the mindset of a CPA firm, at least you know about the whole consulting process and billing clients. You've got that under your belt. I thought you wanted to know about building a website and business cards and ways of doing business, you have some background on that, having worked at a CPA firm. And the important thing is just to get started. I make this point at every session we have. We live in an etch-a-sketch world. Years ago, you started a business, you had to have a trifold. Everybody had to have a trifold. There's garages in the United States filled with trifolds because no one ever used them. Okay, they were totally worthless. But you had to have business cards. I think today we will be networking some in person. You have to have business cards, but a website, and you have to have a website. Don't rely on your LinkedIn profile to carry the day. But websites are very cheap. You need to have a URL and put up an inexpensive, a 2 or 3 page website, and then you exist. If you don't have it, you don't exist. People want to know you're serious. At yahoo.com is not going to do it for you. Is he serious? At yahoo.com? Really? You have to look serious.
That's always good to have AOL. That's a better one. Okay. But look, Sean, I'll take your $100 because I'll say, what you have to do. It's networking. Okay. And what you want to do is, networking with everyone you know. But what I do is that I have I call it my core 6 groups that I deal with. Those are accounting firms, law firms, bankers, commercial insurance brokers, commercial real estate brokers, and technology companies. Those are the 6 people who always deal with people in the C-suite. And that's where the action is. And especially if your practice is, I'll call it small, medium-sized companies, those 6 people are the ones who have the owner's ear all the time. And those are the people you want to speak with who could then, help you get into these different companies, Joe. So that's one thing you have to do. And as Matt says, there's a lot of ancillary things that you also have to do, with your website. Make sure you get a good domain name, okay, that you set up. If you can, when it comes to a phone number, okay, try to get one that's easy to remember, so to speak. Okay, basic things that we need in today's environment.
Yeah.
And also you need a presence. What I recommend highly is to work the social media internet. And what I mean by that, you do a lot of posting, especially on LinkedIn. And so when people get to see your name, then they get to, give you calls no matter what. And, that's one thing you could do.
To Marty's point about email addresses, picking out your URL is very important. I was, again, in the advertising business. Everybody wanted their name on the door. So at one point we had 4 partners and they had long names. So we had the world's largest business cards that actually didn't fit in your wallet. Right. So, but the problem is knowing what the company does. So my company is the Financial Executives Consulting Group. Guess what we do? Okay. So those are your choices. If you want to look small, put Matt at the FECG.com. Okay. It's just you, right? No, if you put your whole name, it could be more people. I think companies that just use their first names and their URL, they look small. And some of them are pretty big, but the first people got their first name and at the company, right? Everybody else has to use both, but it's just very confusing. And again, it makes it look like you're not a big company. And you want to cast the big shadow. My opinion, okay?
I would say, Joe, if it's helpful, the Zoom strategy that I use is it's a good filter to learn people you would like to get to know. But I think the key part of the Zoom networking events is following up with the 3 or 4 people you're like, I really want to talk more with that person. and just reaching out and say, hey, let's do a better introduction in person. And you can do that either over coffee or you can do it over Zoom type of thing, just to develop that deeper relationship. The Zoom meetings, especially COVID, were rampant and not useful. So I'm not a huge fan of the Zoom networking either. But I do use them to kind of, find those people I do want to learn more about. Like, hey, I really want to learn what you're doing. I think you're interesting, because I think at the end of the day, people buy emotionally. They use everything else to rationalize their decisions. So a lot of your referrals are going to come from the people that you connect the best with. So that's where the kind of deeper conversations really, really are helpful. But yeah, I hate Zoom as well, but it is the way of the world. And yeah, I think there's definitely people that just go Zoom to Zoom to Zoom and throw their name out there a billion times, hoping they, get that one opportunity. I don't think it really happens that way. Plus, I don't really enjoy that approach. It's like cold calling. I hate it. So I prefer my way anyways, to just try to meet some really interesting people and just continue the conversation, right? And get some good friendships. And that's always worked well for me.
Yeah, the most organizations are not doing the breakout rooms very well. And then that's the key. I don't know how many of you have two monitors, but oftentimes when I'm in a meeting, I have on my other monitor my database, and I look people up on LinkedIn while I'm in the meeting with them.
Sure.
And send them a LinkedIn invitation. If it's somebody I want to get to know, you want to use the tools that are in front of you. Yes, it would be better to be in person, but we're not. Okay. Zoom, everybody knows how to use it. It's a new tool. It's only, we've been in this now for 2 years where we haven't been able to be in front of people. That's a hell of a long time. So get over it. You have to use the tools that you have. And being at your desk, the half an hour to go meet somebody and a half an hour back home is gone. You've got that hour to use. It's very efficient. And then something I just want to repeat that I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. There's only 3 groups of people who will help you when you're looking for work or when you're looking for consulting assignments. People who know you, people who know of you, and people who know people you know. That's it. Posted jobs? No, that doesn't work. You have to work your network and you have to build your network. People who know you know who to refer you to, right? If you call up people and ask them, do they have any work for you? That's not a good approach, because you're painting them into a corner, right? You're backing them into a corner. I think that's a better phrase. But if you call up people who know you and ask them if they know any people to introduce you to, they may have an assignment for you, but because you didn't ask them directly, they have a few minutes to think about it. You haven't put them in a difficult position. You're just asking them if they know people they can introduce you to. They know you, right? You're not going to steal from anybody they introduce you to, so they'll introduce you. And then they're introducing you to the right people, and you can ask each of those people for a referral, the classic networking cycle. That's what really works. We have a couple more minutes here. I believe my meeting should start on time and end on time, so I'm going to try to hold everybody to that. Anything else we want to talk about? Heidi, you have something for us? No? Okay.
And I put something in the chat box.
Yeah.
I've been using a company called Pizzazz Marketing out of Austin to do all my social media posting, so that I have good professional looking social media posts a couple of times a week. Okay. And Lisa, the lady I put in the chat room, is probably working for a dozen folks in our space nationally. So she understands the themes and understands what to do. She's not replicating it. Same thing for everybody, but she's got a lot of clients in this space.
Marty, I think you have somebody also, don't you?
Yeah, there's a couple of people that I have who contact me offline, and I could give you some names. Okay. But what Jeff says, it's really it's important where you have a professional who really can really produce for you the the information that will be attracted by other people, and they could help target it and get it out. I have a friend of mine who he has his own consulting business, not in accounting, but it's more of I'll call it business advisement. And he went with this one company, and what they found was that the best times of the day in his area went to post, because they could get a lot of statistics on who's looking at what, when. And he found out that I think it was something like Tuesday at noontime was the best time for him to post. Okay. It just, some of these things work out that way, but you want to look at the right company to represent you, so to speak, and help you garner the type of clients you want. I agree with you, Jeff. You got to do that.
Good. All right, well, it's 5 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for joining this stop by my office. I hope this will encourage you to spread the word about our group, because we had a very nice discussion today. But also, you can start your own stop by my office if there's some topic you'd like to explore. Heidi, if you have, you want to talk to people who are building CPA practices, you can set up your own stop by my office and just talk to people who are setting up their own CPA practices. That's the power of what I've been suggesting to people. You can really get to the right people easily. It solves the run it up the flagpole and see who salutes problem. Okay, so have at it. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And the meeting's been recorded, and I'll send it out to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Everybody
everybody.
stay healthy. That's all that matters.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Matt.